Hey, welcome to Native Lifestyle Balance Session 4, Healthy Eating. I'm Carol Percy here with Roz Barber, and we are your lifestyle coaches. Last week, we learned about the importance of portion size, and we practiced using measuring spoons and cups to be accurate with portion size. We made a plan to use the 3 ways to eat less fat and calories by eating a high-fat food less often, eating a smaller portion of a high-fat food, eating a low-fat food instead of a high-fat food. How did you do following your plan? How are you feeling about your goals? Let's review Betty's plan from session 3. Betty was able to order a hamburger instead of a cheeseburger. She wanted to eat a low-fat food instead, and she saved herself 9 grams of fat by doing that. She made her fry bread 2 inches smaller and was surprised her family didn't complain. A friend taught Betty to eat salad by putting the salad dressing in a little bowl on the side of the plate, and then to dip her fork into the salad dressing and then dip it in the salad. In that way, Betty was able to taste the salad dressing, but she eats a lot less of the fat from the salad dressing. Betty wanted to stop eating pork sausage for breakfast, and she wanted to eat a piece of low-fat fruit instead of the sausage. So Betty ran out of fruit in the middle of the week, so she couldn't eat a piece of fruit at every breakfast. Since melons are in season right now, she is going to buy some extra melon this week so the fruit lasts longer. The one plan Betty didn't achieve was to eat pizza less often. At work, they ordered pizza one day, and it looked so good she had to eat some. Then Betty's kids wanted pizza over the weekend, so they went out for pizza. Betty's plan had been to eat pizza just once a week, but she ate it twice a week. She is going to try again this week to eat pizza only once a week. You can review your goals to eat less fat just like Betty did, and problem solve barriers that you found with your plans. Now let's plot your weight for today. Betty weighs 197 pounds today, so we plot 100. Here's 195, 96, 97. We go over to our next column. We plot 197 right here, and then we write today's date down here at the bottom. Be sure to plot your weight on your How Am I Doing graph, not Betty's weight. So Betty's weight is the same this week as last week. Betty's frustrated that her weight didn't change because she's really trying hard with her eating plans. Betty thinks one reason she didn't lose weight is she did not keep track 2 days in the last week, so might have fallen off her eating plan on those 2 days. It's common for us to lose motivation when building new habits, so try to keep your food diary every day to keep yourself on track.
This week we will shift our focus from what we eat to how we eat. We want to continue to keep our food log and try to eat close to our fat gram goal each day. We will look at how we eat using my plate guideline and compare my plate to your plate. We will also talk about eating lots of different food. So let's look at our overall eating pattern to see how healthy we eat and how we might improve what we eat. Turn to page 2 of session 4 called Ways to Eat Healthy. This handout has a lot of tips we can use to help us eat healthy. Number 1, set up a regular pattern of eating. Regular eating keeps us from getting hungry as hunger can make us lose control and overeat. Try not to skip meals to lose weight, but rather eat at regular times through the day. Number 2, eat slowly so we are more aware of what we're eating. Set down your fork between bites to slow yourself down. Talk with other people while you eat. If you eat more slowly, you probably will feel your stomach is full sooner, so you will stop eating and eat less. Number 3, don't worry about being a member of the Clean Plate Club. Serve yourself only the portion you need to eat. Eating more food than we need is the biggest way we waste food. 4. Try to eat with others at the table. Clean off the table so you have room to eat. Turn off the TV and your cell phone so you pay attention to your eating.
Now let's use My Plate to look at the types of foods we eat. The picture on page 3 is of My Plate. My Plate uses a place setting to represent the 5 food groups and the amount of food from each food group that should be on our plates at each meal. Look at the brown section of My Plate. This section represents the grains that we eat. See how about a quarter of the whole plate comes from grains? Half the grains we eat should be whole grains. So what is a whole grain? When kernels of corn are growing, they have 3 parts. A whole grain food was made with all 3 parts of the kernel. Refined grains have been processed to remove 2 of the 3 parts of the kernel. Most of us are familiar with the kernel of corn that has the outer shell, the middle, and a small white part that attaches the kernel to the cob. Those are the 3 parts of a grain. If you have made kneel-down bread, you know that you grind the whole kernel to make the bread, so kneel-down bread is a whole grain food. Now let's think of the bread we buy in a store. A grain of wheat has the same 3 parts as a kernel of corn. When we eat whole grain, all 3 parts of the wheat grain goes into the bread. This is a piece of whole wheat bread. When we eat white bread, the wheat grain has been processed, so only 1 part of the grain goes into the bread. So whole wheat bread is a whole grain, and white bread is a refined grain. So whole grain bread is healthier to eat than white bread. It has more fiber because it's made with a whole grain. In the same way, we use white flour in tortillas and fry bread. To add some fiber or whole grain to the breads you make, you can add some whole wheat flour into the white flour that you use to make the dough. To know for sure if you are eating a whole grain bread, look at your food label. The first ingredient in the bread should say 100% whole wheat for it to be a whole grain bread. If the bread says just wheat flour and not 100% wheat, it is most likely made from white refined flour with a little brown coloring thrown in. Other foods that are whole grains are cornmeal. Here's a yellow cornmeal, blue cornmeal. Oatmeal is a whole grain food. Here's rice, if it's not the processed rice, but the whole grain rice. And then this is whole grain pasta, and this is the one that's made with whole grains. You can see it's like a little darker, 100% whole grain flour. And then this is the pasta that's made with the white refined flour.
Now let's look at the red section of the plate called fruits, and the green section of the plate is called vegetable. We should eat half of our plate from fruits and vegetables with a focus on vegetable. Vegetable and fruit contain a lot of nutrition. Most of us don't eat enough fruits and vegetables. It's interesting to think about the same number of calories and different food we choose to eat. One king-size candy bar has the same number of calories as all the fruits in this bowl right here. I couldn't eat this much fruit in one sitting, so I could easily eat the candy bar. Think about the difference in the healthy nutrition you would be getting by eating the fruit instead of the sugar that is in the candy bar. We can eat fruits and vegetables that are fresh and frozen or dried
And canned.
and canned. Fruit can and the light syrup and juice that is lower calorie choice than canned fruit and heavy syrup. When eating canned vegetables, low sodium reduces how much salt you eat. Fresh fruits and vegetables are least processed choice. Lots of people say they can't eat vegetable and fruit because it costs too much. If you're concerned about the cost of food you eat, save all your receipt from a week's worth of eating to see what food are costing you the most. In other words, save your receipt for grocery, the food that you buy at gas station, the food that you eat outside the home, food and drinks that you eat at coffee shop, and any other food you buy, and add up the cost. Usually food we eat outside the home costs us the most. Next comes the snack, soda, the food with low nutrition value. Meat can be expensive. When we look at everything we eat, we can honestly see how we spend the most food dollars. So fruits and vegetables may be affordable if we change some of our habits about the food that we buy. You can lower your cost of fruits and vegetables by being a smart shopper. Think about what fruits and vegetables stays the same price throughout the year. Things like carrots, apple, cucumber, bananas, onion, and broccoli stays about the same price all year. Buy other fruits and vegetables in season or on sale. Blueberries are an example of fruit that will freeze very well. So if you have a space in your freezer, buy the blueberries when they are on sale and freeze them in a gallon Ziploc bags to eat throughout the year. You can also freeze squash to eat all winter. Take advantage of the summer harvest to eat peaches, corn, tomato that are really tasty.
The purple quarter of my plate represents protein we eat. If you think of meat when you think of protein, try to think of lean meats. Trim visible fat from the meat. Meat has plenty of fat on its own, so cook meat in a method other than frying, like grilling or broiling. Eggs, nuts, and peanut butter. Bring out the pinto beans too. Peanut butter is on our meat plate right here. Are all proteins. Be careful of your serving size of nuts. A handful of nuts has a lot of fat. So think instead of eating spoonfuls of nuts instead of a handful. Dry beans like pinto beans without added fat or meat are an excellent low-fat protein.
Finally, the blue circle outside my plate represents the dairy. Since many native people are lactose intolerant, they may not be able to drink milk without an upset stomach. There are lactose-free milk or soy milk as an option. Dairy is an important source of calcium, and calcium is important to keep your bones strong. So if you cannot eat dairy, your body may need other sources calcium. And Jupiter ash, people put in their blue corn mush, is really a good source of calcium. Sometimes people who get an upset stomach from drinking milk can eat yogurt, another source of calcium. Lower the calorie that you eat in sugar and the yogurt by buying yogurt that is plain, or vanilla, adding your own fruit instead of buying yogurt that contains fruit syrup. If you can drink milk or use milk in your cereal, try to step down one layer of fat content at a time to drink less fat from milk. So if you are currently drinking whole milk, try 2%. Once you get used to the taste of the 2%, try 1%, then skim milk. If you are buying milk for your children younger than 2, check with your doctor as to how much fat should be in the milk.
You might wonder about the fat you eat. So let's talk a little about what we hear about fat. No matter what fat you eat, whether it's butter, lard, shortening, margarine, olive oil, or vegetable oil, and so on, 1 tablespoon has 12 to 14 grams of fat. In other words, they are all high-fat foods. So when we are trying to lose weight, we want to eat small amounts of all fats. Cooking sprays are an excellent way to brown foods without adding calories from fat. Fats that are solid at room temperature contain saturated fat or other processed fat that is not good for our heart. The advantage of liquid oils, like olive oil or canola oil, is that they have less saturated fat. So when you cook with fat, try to use the fats that are the least saturated. Read your food label. Try to avoid all foods that have any trans fat, because trans fat is a processed fat that is not good for your heart. Go to page 10 in session 2 of our lessons, and we see the food label. See the red box that says total fat? We talked about that before. Under total fat, you find a listing for saturated fat and trans fats. And so if you're trying to figure out if a food has a lot of saturated fat in it, you want to look at how much the grams of saturated fat are in it compared to total fat. And if half or more of this total fat is saturated fat grams, then it's a high-fat food. And you always want to eat foods that have 0 trans fat on the label.
So those are the food group on my plate. Notice there is no soda on my plate. If you are drinking soda on a regular basis, you are drinking calories from sugar, and these calories gives your body very little nutrition. What might you drink instead of soda? Water is an excellent choice. What about making some Navajo tea? Use the label on the drinks to know which drink contains sugar. Every 4 grams of sugar on the food label is like eating 1 teaspoon of sugar. If you look at a 12-ounce can of soda, it usually contains about 40 grams of sugar.
Wow.
That is like sitting down with a bowl of sugar and a teaspoon, eating 9 to 10 teaspoons of sugar like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Wow.
7, 8, 9, 10. Does this sound like a very good choice to you? On page 4 shows you the 5 food groups we just talked about, and some low fat and low calorie and high fat and high sugar content food that we might eat from one food group. Look down on the list and compare the list to the food you eat. If you are eating a lot of food listed in the high fat and the high sugar column, see if you can substitute in some of the food in the low fat and low calorie column. Write the low fat and low calorie option that you chose in the blank space provided on page 5. You can look at page 5 when you need ideas of new food to eat. Learn more about my plate and how much you should eat from the different food groups. Visit this website.
There's a fun activity called Rate Your Plate on page 6 of your handouts. Pick one day you kept track last week. We'll look at Betty's book. All right, I'm going to pick Tuesday. And check one box on the Rate Your Plate for every food that you ate that day. For Betty, the first thing that she had for breakfast at 7 a.m. was a cup of oatmeal. And so we're going to give her a check in the grain for 1 cup. And see how it says 1 cup and there's 2 boxes? So because she ate 1 cup, she gets 2 X's there. Then she had some fried potatoes. They're also in the grain group, and it was a half a cup, so we'll just put 1 X there. She had a banana, so that would be in the fruit group, and so we'll put an X there. She had a turkey sandwich that had 2 slices of bread, so that would be an X for 2 pieces of bread in the grain group. And then turkey, so that's a protein, and she had 2 ounces, so we're going to give her 2 X's. And then she had lettuce on the sandwich, so we'll give her an X for a vegetable. And she had some mustard. Mustard's a free food, so you don't have to X that. Then at night she had spaghetti, 1 cup's worth, so we'll give her again 2 X's for the spaghetti. She had tomato sauce, 1 cup, so that'll be a vegetable, and we'll give her 2 X's because she ate 1 cup. And then she had ground beef in her spaghetti sauce, and so we'll give her X's for the ground beef. And then she had green beans, which is a vegetable. And she had about a half a cup, so we'll give her 1 X. And then the final thing she ate is popcorn. She had about 3 cups, so we'll give her 3 X's for the popcorn. So now what you want to do after you've put your X's in for what you ate in one day is to evaluate your plate. And so what do you see on Betty's plate here? Well, you'd say she really didn't eat any dairy, so that's one thing that she could improve about her plate, to somehow add dairy into it. She only had 1 fruit, and so she can add in a fruit. Do you see how these are shaded like this? That gives you an approximate number of the amount you should be eating in a day. And so you can see that Betty could add 1 more fruit into what she's eating. She actually did a good job and ate more vegetables than she expected. That's something she's been trying to work on. And then she ate a little bit too much grains, and then she could have, she did okay on her proteins. And so that's how you use Rate Your Plate to help you. It's really common when people look at their plate to not eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and to overeat grains and protein. And so if you see that for yourself, then you want to look at the chart on page 7. And then you can use this to adjust what you ate in a day at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and for snacks to try to better match what you want to eat in Rate Your Plate.
Page 8 and 9 shows some good ideas for eating less fat. There are some fun ideas for low-fat flavoring on food. Have you ever thought of putting salsa on your baked potato instead of butter, cheese, or sour cream? Adding butter on vegetables increases the fat and calorie we eat from those foods. Could you add vegetables like zucchini, bell pepper, carrots to your spaghetti sauce and leave the ground beef out to lower the fat you are eating? Buy lean meat when they are on sale. Trim the visible fat from your meat before cooking. Remove the skin from the chicken and the turkey so you eat less fat. You can squeeze the grease off the fried bread and drain the bread on the paper towel.
How a food is cooked affects how much fat we eat. We've talked a little about baking, roasting, broiling, or grilling meat instead of frying. Microwaving fresh vegetables is a great low-fat way to cook vegetables. Use fresh vegetables and cut up the fresh vegetables and put them in a microwave-safe dish with a cover. This is some broccoli we microwaved for about 3 to 4 minutes on high. We just rinse the fresh broccoli, cut it up, and put it in the bowl before microwaving. You don't have to add any water. You can see there's water in there that's come off when the food was microwaved. My plate is only one model of healthy eating. The main message to you is when eating, include a variety of foods. So you eat some foods from all of the food groups.
Your to-do list for next week is on page 10. Keep track of your weight and keep your food log. Look up the fat gram and try to stay close to your daily fat gram goals. Try to rate your plate for 3 days this week. Page 11 has some extra copies of the Rate Your Plate forms to use for this activity. Before you watch Session 5, evaluate your progress by asking yourself what changes you made to match my plate guidelines. Ask yourself what problem you had eating a variety of food and think about how you might solve these problems. Next week, our focus will shift to daily activities. We look forward to seeing you for Session 5. Move those muscles.
Hagone!